Hi everyone, it's me David Chen. Welcome to the YouTube channel. Using a new setup today. I have no idea if this is going to work, but hopefully it does. I'm here with @JoyOfNapping, and we're using this microphone, this wireless microphone, to talk, and hopefully you can hear us okay. How's it going, Joy?
You know, I kind of feel like we're two kids playing newscaster with this
Yes.
thing, but hopefully it works out technically.
We're here to discuss Guy Ritchie's latest film, Wrath of Man, which is the first film we have seen in a theater in like 15 months or so. So why don't you tell us about this joyous occasion? What was it? Like we saw it under interesting circumstances, right?
Yeah, you know, we are both fully vaccinated and have been for a few weeks. And I know it has really killed you inside to not be able to go to the movies. You used to go once or twice a week, and it really was a thing that your life, the rhythms of your life revolved around sort of the new releases of the week. And so I think that's one of the things about the pandemic that was hardest for you, actually. Um, but at the same time that we didn't feel comfortable, lots of other people didn't feel comfortable being in indoor spaces with people sitting close by-ish, breathing the same circulated air. And therefore, the studios pushed everything that was good. So even if you were willing to take the risk, mostly what you could see were sort of simul releases with what you could see at home, or the catalog stuff. You could rent a theater for $99 and see Back to the Future.
Yeah.
So I really was hoping, though, for you to be able to enjoy that experience, because I know it's meant a lot to you. And so I've been sort of looking through the AMC website every week or two to see what's available. And honestly, a lot of the stuff you have seen at home, like Raya and the Last Dragon or Godzilla versus
Yeah, a
Kong.
lot of it's been available for streaming on HBO Max or on Disney Plus or whatever, right?
And so you have stayed on top of all the new releases for the Slash Filmcast, and you see them immediately at home. So even though Godzilla versus Kong is probably better in a theater than it is in our living room, I would think. Debatable,
Yeah.
but probably. It's not like the really cinematic experiences. You'd already had them at home. So, and I don't think any of them were so incredible that you really wanted to see them a second time and pay like possibly kind of a lot of money to go see. So all of this is to say, it felt like a perfect opportunity when this movie came out, because it's Guy Ritchie and it's going to be really stylish. It's something that will show well on the big screen. And we paid the money to rent the whole theater just to be extra safe in terms of COVID. That was definitely a splurge, but it was like a gift that I wanted to give you.
Thank you. Thank you.
And we invited friends who were vaccinated. So we only had a few other friends with us, which, I don't think the goal was to have a big party or anything like that, but it was nice to see like a few people
Yeah.
at the same
It
time.
was nice to enjoy a movie with friends, which is something that I haven't done in over 15 months, basically.
So it was a movie that would show well on the big screen that we saw like basically the day that it came out, from a director you really like. And I'll just say the other thing that I knew, because I saw the trailer, is like, this is a very Dave Chen movie. This is a heist movie. It felt about right. It wasn't terribly heavy. It seemed from the trailer, and it seemed like it would be a good sit, as someone once said.
It was a good sit. It was a good sit. So let's talk about the movie Wrath of Man. So yeah, we rented a movie theater, and it was great. All these things I missed about seeing the movies just came flooding back. Maria Menounos in the pre-movie show. I'm like, oh, Maria Menounos, I've missed you so much. And all the AMC logo, da 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 da. The AMC plays the music, and the Coca-Cola and popcorn guy, the guy who throws the popcorn on himself, but he doesn't do it anymore. All the little touches of going to see a movie, I really, really love. So it was just great to be back in the theater. And as a result of that, I think that Wrath of Man is possibly the greatest movie of all time. No.
Because you were primed by that ad in the pre-roll for like the AMC Stubs program, which they're still selling, I guess, or marketing. I mean, we have canceled our AMC Stubs membership, but that I think brought flashbacks, because David used to like try to really optimize his 3 free movies per week and like get the most out of that. It was like a whole rhythm of life built around it. I will say it did feel really pretty safe because it was really, the theater was very empty. I think we saw maybe 12 humans besides us. Who were patrons and maybe 4 workers, and the mall itself was really empty. I know things are really bustling in some parts of the country, but not in Seattle. So
let's talk about the movie Wrath of Man. Guy Ritchie's newest movie. It's another gangster movie. He just made one with The Gentleman. And this is basically Guy Ritchie's Den of Thieves. And that's a funny statement because Den of Thieves is itself a ripoff of a movie like Heat, which Michael Mann's movie many people regard as a masterpiece. Den of Thieves is a ripoff of that. This is kind of a ripoff of Den of Thieves in some ways. I loved this movie.
I'm sorry.
We're doing it live, folks. There's no net here.
Do you want to start that over?
We're literally, this is going on YouTube forever. So everything we do is going on YouTube forever.
I wasn't told about the lack of editing budget for this.
So we are. So anyway,
love it.
The movie's great. The movie is awesome. I thought it was awesome.
Do you really think it's awesome, independent of your emotional priming, because this is your return to the theater?
Independently, here are some awesome things about the movie. Okay, first of all, it has a pretty great cast. Jason Statham doing his thing, so that's awesome. And Jeffrey Donovan's in this movie, which I'm a big fan of Jeffrey Donovan. And
who's Jeffrey Donovan? Is he the guy from Sicario with the mustache?
Yes, that's right.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. And then Scott Eastwood's in the movie, who I usually don't like, but he plays someone who's very unlikable in the movie, so it just is like fits perfectly. The music and sound design of this movie is really, really cool. It just basically, I can't really explain it, but except to say that the score, it blends in and is woven through the diegetic sounds of the movie, which I was just like, this is really interesting. Like, as I'm listening to it, I'm like, there's like sound effects in the movie that are part of the score and vice versa. And I was just like, ooh, this is really interesting. And so, and of course, it's like it's a Guy Ritchie heist movie. It's non-linear. You start this movie meeting Jason Statham. He's joining this security company, and you're like, what's going on? Like, why is he doing this? And then as the movie goes on, you find out more about what his mission is and what other people's mission is. And it's just, I loved it. It's absolutely ridiculous. It barely makes any sense, in my opinion. And at the end of the day, the biggest problem with this movie is it's not about anything. You know, I don't think it's trying to say something about toxic masculinity or about PTSD or, you know, criminality versus law enforcement or anything like that. It has no message. It's just a fun genre exercise. But I had a great time with it. Okay, Joy of Napping, what'd you think?
I think it is a pretty okay movie. It's not a great movie, but it was greatly entertaining. You know, I really appreciated its company, and it was about the level of intellectual effort I could exert for this 2-hour window. So that was really perfect. Like, sometimes when you go to the movies on a Friday night, you just kind of want to be taken someplace else for a couple hours, and it just felt like an extremely honest trade of like my dollars for that experience. I don't want anybody to see the trailer for this because I think the trailer gives away way
The
too
trailer is awful. Like, it basically, and I think I saw this when the trailer came out. People were saying, "Oh, you've seen the whole movie if you watch the trailer," and that is basically true. Like, there's stuff that's in the final 15 minutes of the movie that's in the trailer. You know, like, and it's like significant plot beats. So if you can at all avoid it, don't watch the trailer.
I think I watched a trailer, but maybe not the final form. Whatever. Avoid the trailer. But that point you're making about the music and the diegetic sound, like, I think it's almost like a music video or something. Like, the way that it's all put together is so slickly edited and tightly put to, and I enjoy that.
There's a part of this movie that literally feels like a trailer for the movie in the movie itself. Because something that's happening a lot in trailers these days is sad versions of popular songs, like sad, ominous versions of popular songs. of which in the case of this movie, Johnny Cash, right? The
It's Folsom Prison Blues.
Folsom Prison Blues. There's like a remix of Folsom Prison Blues. It's in the trailer, and there was another trailer we saw today that also had Folsom Prison Blues that was like remixed as part of the trailer. Anyway, point being, they show the Folsom Prison Blues in the trailer, and then that's also in the movie, and it's like this remix, and they're cutting it to the music, and it's like I'm watching a trailer for the movie in the movie itself. It feels very Guy Ritchie-esque. So
it's interesting that you think this is like a bad photocopy of Den of Thieves is a bad photocopy or a bad facsimile of Heat. I think this is a good photocopy of The Transporter, or something like Taken. Basically these things that are just literally like an exercise in a middle-aged white guy with like middling clear motivations just doing stuff, and like you're just supposed to appreciate how competent he is at being violent. And I think like let's just set aside how problematic that might be, particularly in America. But this feels like an elevated version of, not to say Taken wasn't a good, well put together thriller, but I've also seen some really bad versions of Liam with a gun, Jason Statham with a gun, Denzel with a gun. There's a whole bunch of these.
What do we think elevates a movie like Wrath of Man beyond like a Taken? Just like production values, like budget. What do you like? The music. Like, what do you think makes it better?
So, on paper, almost nothing. Like in terms of like the plot, let's say, or the plot mechanics. But this thing has an actual title sequence, which you pointed out, and that's unusual. And the title sequence looks a little bit grandiose, actually. It's got these images that could be like biblical, but in the way that James Blake thought about the Bible, like really tortuous. And
Guy Ritchie loves a good title sequence. We should point out, like his last movie, The Gentleman, had a title. He just likes a good title sequence, and the movie is outrageously over the top. Like there's like chapters with like.
So this is my point. Yeah. Is the names of the chapters are florid and literary, and all of this comes together in a way that I think emotionally pays off and actually resonated for me at the end.
Wow. Okay. Cool. Yeah. I mean, it's just ridiculous and over the top. Like, what's the first chapter? Like, A Dark Soul. That's the name of the first chapter. And it's like you're watching a Jason Statham heist/action movie, and then like this text comes, like this serifed font comes up, and it's like A Dark Soul, and it's like, okay, it's a little over the top, but you know what? I'm gonna go with it, and I think overall the movie does deliver. So, anything else before we get to spoilers you want to mention about the movie? It sounds like we both enjoyed it. I had a great time. I loved this movie, and part of it is that it was the first movie I saw in a really long time, but also just. I love Den of Thieves too. I love Heat. Like I love heist movies, and so I really had a great time with this movie. Any other thoughts before we get to spoilers?
If you're trying to decide if this movie is for you, you definitely need to park your skepticism. It's not going to necessarily make a ton of sense. It is a genre exercise, so if you like the heist genre, that's great. Or the guy with a gun, middle-aged guy with a gun genre. I will say, like, you really can't bring any political concerns into this film because there are like 3 women maybe that are on. Well, maybe
this movie does not pass the Bechdel test.
But not even close. Like even the roles played by women probably could be played by men without losing anything. And so like
there's one character that was like kind of like a fixer documents provider that was just like. It could have been a man or a woman in that role, but they were just like, let's throw some diversity into the mix,
If that. And I think it's, I don't know, you meet like 15 or 20 people. And so they're all men. And at some point it becomes kind of hard to distinguish them. Some of them just are at some point referred to by number, like it really is. It is a dude-heavy movie. So if you want to spend your time watching dudes shoot things, each other, and scheme, Like, it's a wonderful time. If you want to wait for like the really interesting part where the women show, it's not coming.
I like some of the heist components, like, during one of the heists, of which there are multiple in this film, like they refer to each other as numbers. I'm like, smart. That way they don't need to say each other's names. They have numbers.
Yeah, tuck that away for
A lot of clever stuff. Okay, we're gonna talk about spoilers for Wrath of Man starting right now. Let's start with this comment from Stanish Studios, who says, "Better Than the Gentleman, really disliked that one, mostly because of the racism." And let me just tell you, I was waiting this whole movie for some fresh, offensive anti-Asian racism, of which much appears in Guy Ritchie's last movie, The Gentleman, and I was pleasantly surprised. I don't think there's any explicit anti-Asian racism. What do you think?
I didn't think there was any racism at all.
Exactly.
I
Delightful.
I mean, it was
Always great to see a Guy Ritchie movie with no racism.
It felt like a race-blind casting kind of situation.
Yeah, I would agree. I'd agree.
Which, to be clear, is not my version of like a dream outcome, but it's better than something that feels like actively built on, slurs or,
You didn't think the movie was extremely progressive?
I did not.
Okay, so let's talk. Like, we're in spoiler territory, so don't tune out if you don't want to be spoiled for Wrath of Man. But the whole movie is building up to this big heist sequence at the end, and I would say it's a pretty great heist sequence, for multiple reasons. Okay. Reason number one, there's just chaos like unfolding left and right, and it felt like a controlled chaos. Like you understood what the perpetrator's goal was, and you understood all the impediments to that goal. One of the things that Guy Ritchie does is he like intercuts it with the perpetrators planning the heist, and it's like it kind of explains like what they're doing. And I thought that was like a smart way of doing it, because most directors don't do that. Most directors have the planning session, and then you play the heist out separately. Guy Ritchie's like, I don't have time. I don't have, I got to intercut these. I don't have time to like wait, build tension that way. So he intercuts it, and you kind of understand exactly what's going on during the heist. So like that's great. The second thing about the ending of this movie, which again we are in full spoilers for Wrath of Man right now, is virtually every character that you meet during the film is murdered. Like, I would say like 95% of characters that you meet during the movie are killed. And that's just like bold decision, because the movie has spent all this time like introducing you to this like full colorful cast of characters, and you're thinking like, hey, who in this cast is going to be like in on it? Who's going to be left standing at the end? Like all these questions, and the movie's just like, nope, they're all dead at the end, basically. Which I thought was just like bold movie. Like most heist movies wouldn't do that. So those are a couple things I appreciated. Yeah.
You appreciated that because it surprised you and
Yeah.
it sort of defied
Just shocking.
the conventions.
Yeah. And also like there were so many components of the perpetrator's plan that was just like smart. Like, that's what you want when you're watching a heist movie. You're watching the heist unfold. You're like, man, like that's so smart. Like, I wish I had, like, if I was planning a heist, which I would never do, I wish I had thought of that. There's one part of the movie where like the thing that's most impressive, and you can actually see this shot in the trailer, is once they abscond with the money, it's like, oh, well, then the cops are going to be all over them. They drive into a building that protects them from other vehicles going inside. I'm like, so smart. So smart. Mwah. Mwah. Okay, what'd you think of the final sequence?
I thought it was good. I actually thought it was quite chaotic, but I wanted to focus less on the final sequence than some of the other components.
Sure.
Yes, it's building to the final sequence, but it is, the body count is shocking. This would qualify as one of the hugest mass murders in like American history by the time it's over. But I think that the movie makes a really interesting decision to start with a scene that you basically understand, or at least you think you understand. And then it comes back to that scene 3 or 4 times from different perspectives until you, not different people's perspectives, but giving you a little bit more information each time in a way that doesn't feel repetitive, but you come to understand it in new and different ways, and it really propels the plot forward. So there's a bunch of stuff that happens in the scene that I couldn't quite hear, and I was just like, oh, they're just like shouting at each other, and it's just gibberish, no big deal. But you start to realize over time that actually things went really wrong. And like, I don't know, I think all of that was like super clever, and again, a little bit different than the way that one of these typically gets told. And that's all just to explain the opening,
The setup, yeah.
the sort of propelling, inciting incident of the film. And usually the movie spends a lot of time building up to the end, whereas like the end is very self-contained.
Yeah, I think you're right. Basically, the movie opens with a heist, and then during the course of the movie, they show that heist basically 3 or 4 more times. And it's like, it's hard to show the same scene from like pretty similar angles too. It's not like they like switched it up that much. And then make it still interesting, like reveal new things about that scene each time. And I thought it was really well done. I enjoyed that part of it. So yeah, really interestingly structured. And basically, you start you're in Jason Statham's perspective, and you're trying to figure out what his deal is. And the movie kind of spirals outwards. You like learn more about all these people around him and the people that he might be pitted against, and his friends and things like that. And so like, pretty interesting structure, I would say. So, any other thoughts about the movie?
I think that one of the people that watched it with us compared it to a superhero movie, and that, when people are so hyper competent at their jobs, they feel like they're untouchable. And so it sort of lowers the emotional stakes for the audience because you never really actually feel like the person is at risk. And I think that's true. In this movie, it has some of those components. However, what made the end moving for me is because he is so wildly competent, and yet he is actually really frustrated in what he's trying to do. Like, it takes a lot of work. It goes very poorly. It costs a lot of, I'm going to call them dead ends. But like, there's a really fascinating sequence in the middle that feels like it's from a completely different movie. Like you're meeting all new people, and they're going through there's a whole new tone to the movie. Like it's not heist feeling at all. And it's really, in some ways, hard to watch. And you realize like that despite, like, no matter what it costs, Jason Statham is in this, and it still doesn't make him all powerful, even though he seems a little bit like invincible. So that's why the ending felt worthwhile to me, because he finally got what he wanted.
Yeah, so we're in spoilers for Wrath of Man for those who are tuning in just now. So if you don't,
I'm still trying to be like a little bit circumspect about it.
Yeah. I mean, ultimately the problem with this movie is I don't think it has anything interesting to say about like revenge or anything like that. It's just about it's like you said, it's like a more refined version of Taken. Taken is a great example. It's like this guy's on a mission, and the satisfaction of the movie is watching him accomplish that mission. And he gets frustrated, and he has setbacks, but at the end of the day,
the audience knows.
The audience knows that the movie is going to deliver on the promise of him getting what he wants, or else it would be just outrageously unsatisfying, right? Like, what is the whole point of the movie at that point? So,
I'll say one other thing.
Yeah.
This movie makes a choice that's really interesting, which is basically there's 3 acts, and they roughly correspond to these 3 chapters that the film has. And
pretty sure there's 4 chapters, but yeah.
Okay, well, so,
Yeah.
but there's essentially like a first segment,
Yep.
and you meet like 10 people at least. I could not believe how many people we were meeting. I could not keep them all straight. Then there's another segment where we meet another 5 to 7 people. So it's a different crew, a different universe.
Yeah.
And then, oh my God, in the third part, we meet a whole nother crew of 5 to 7 people. And I'm like, gee, it's like, why? And they have the clearest backstories, and they don't show up until the final, 40% of the movie. And this is where I think they may slightly be trying to say something, because these are military veterans, and they have kind of like there's that other movie with Oscar Isaac and Ben Affleck.
Triple Frontier.
Yeah, like there are other movies like this about men who come home from war in Iraq and Afghanistan and sort of don't quite know what to do with themselves in peace situations or in civilian situations. And I was going to say peacetime, but like it's our conflicts there are very strange. But I think so it touches on that, but it sort of like touches it and lets it go. It doesn't really do anything.
That's what I'm saying, is like it could like, and I think there probably was at some point a 2.5 hour long version of this movie, because the movie's only like 2 hours long, right? There probably was a 2.5 hour long version that like went more into detail. I would actually enjoy seeing it. Like I actually want more backstory, because that's the thing, is you really need to spend more time with these characters for their lives/deaths to mean something. And unfortunately, because they're introducing so many, you don't spend that much time with them. But I'm like, ooh, I'm intrigued. I'm like, I want to learn more about these people. And maybe the movie has more to say, but the version we ended up with on screen didn't really deliver on that. Yeah.
I don't think there is another, because it's actually asymmetrical. We learn more that's interesting about the people who show up last than the people who we've been following the whole time. So I really hope there's not a version that's more about them, because otherwise it's like very unbalanced, and then it's like, who's the protagonist of this thing and why? But I will say there was a thing that annoyed me, and it took me out of the movie.
What's that?
So they're stealing money, cash, from cash trucks. And they're stealing amounts of money that I find quite like, I don't know how much money goes around in cash trucks, but this seems like a lot of money. And then they steal so much money in one day that I'm like, they're good. Like they can probably, I don't know if they never have to work again, but like this is a lot of money to steal. And then for whatever reason, that's not good enough. And so I think they steal $6 million at first. And they decide that the big score that they're going to do is they're going to steal $160 million. And I can't even say it without laughing, because $160 million is so much volume of cash. Like it would fill my house and more, I think. Like it's a lot of it is in small bills because it comes from retail places.
Yeah, I mean, they really gloss over the $150 million. And it's very distracting because there are other heist movies that actually deal with volume of money. I'll just throw out 2 examples off the top of my head. Way of the Gun, Christopher McQuarrie movie where like someone has to carry the cash. Widows, the Steve McQueen heist movie with Viola Davis. Like there's a scene in Widows where they're like, hey, you need to be like, $5 million of cash weighs this much. Like you need to practice putting it on your back and like running, because that's how you're. And it's like you see like the volume of $5 million of cash, and it's like a pain in the ass to carry $5 million of cash. Just that. And in this movie, they're stealing 30 times that amount, but you wouldn't know it from the amount of cash that you see in the movie. Very minor nitpick.
It was unnecessary to me. Like they could have stolen 25 million and divided by 6 or 7 people in the crew. That would have still put them like in a really good situation for life. And I literally was doing math. I was like, what if it were ounces of gold? How much would that weigh? And then they stick it all in a Prius. Like a Prius weighs less than what the cash would weigh. So like it would crash the Prius. And so I couldn't. Obviously,
not great.
The volume was wrong. The weight was wrong. Like everything about it was wrong. And I do think it's sort of implied that they don't get away with all the money. But I also don't even believe that this random cash depot for a truck would have $160 million in it on a given day. None of that. Anyway.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense.
I mean, it's not actually the least realistic part of the film, but it really took me out of it. And I feel better having aired my grievance.
Yeah.
The end.
The cash stuff is very silly. All right, let's get to a few comments before we wrap it up here. Cutter Hale in the chat says, went and saw it tonight. It's very different for a Guy Ritchie movie. I thought it was a great movie and had a lot of fun with it. Scott Eastwood gives his best performance, in my opinion. This is the best I've seen Scott Eastwood. What's great about Scott Eastwood is not only is he a raging asshole in this film, but he actually genuinely has a sense of menace, I think, that I'm actually kind of scared of this guy. Like, this guy is, like, unpredictable, and I don't like him. What did you think of Scott Eastwood, who I think in general I haven't enjoyed? Like, he was in one of the Fast and Furious movies,
I think
or Hobbs and Shaw,
yeah.
one of the, anyway, yeah. So what did you think of him in this movie?
I feel like Scott Eastwood frequently gets cast as sort of like a punchable pretty boy, and there's not a lot there for him. This was like the first I saw him in a role where I was like, oh, this person can act, Like, I am not seeing Scott Eastwood, I'm seeing the actual character. So
Yeah, agreed.
huge step up.
Yeah. Feel free to let us know if any other comments or any questions about the movie. Otherwise, I think we are going to wrap it up relatively shortly. But I'm trying to think of like what else in the final sequence was impressive, what else in the movie was impressive, and yeah, love the music, love the cast, love the structure, love the final heist. Ooh, stuff floating around here. And yeah,
And surprise, Andy Garcia's in this movie.
Andy Garcia's in this movie, and
I don't know why.
well, what's amazing about the Andy Garcia character, Andy Garcia works in law enforcement in this movie. And he's basically says to Jason Statham, like, here's a list of bad guys. Just go to town. Like, do whatever you want to do to find out the thing that murdered your thing. And we're just going to, like, let it happen. Because, like, I guess they figure they're cool with people duking it out, criminal underworld fighting against each other. It can only benefit them. I'm not sure if it would actually work like that in real life. But, this movie is not realistic, so...
I took it as, sorry, I wanted to make sure the mic.
Yeah.
I took that as he's looking the other way, but maybe he's kind of on the take because the rest of the cops are not aligned with what Andy Garcia is doing.
Okay, Gary Yarbrough asks, how was the cinema experience, audio and visual? It was great. I will say that we rented out the theater and we only had vaccinated friends in the theater, and that's how we wanted to watch the movie. And there was literally nothing to stop random people from wandering into the theater and sitting down and watching the movie if they wanted to, which is something that actually happened kind of a couple times. Like, literally a woman came in, there's a massive action scene happening. This is like towards the end of the movie. A woman came in, walked up the stairs, looked at the screen, looked like she was about to sit down, and then was like, left. And it's just like, you rent out a private screening. There's no like guards or anything. You know what I mean? Like, you just have to deal with like potentially people wandering in, which I would have been okay with if they were like wearing masks and whatever.
She had a mask.
She had a mask on, but like if somebody wandered in without wearing a mask, I'd probably like have words with them or something like that. But other than that, like, the thing with these screenings is you just got to be okay with random things happening.
I would have told anyone to get out because I have a higher bar than just a mask. I want the person to be vaccinated. I mean, I feel like that's what we promised our handful of friends that were there, so I would not feel comfortable subjecting them to.
Yeah, but it was great audio, video, and just seeing it on a big screen and like taking it, this is a movie that had a lot of like the audio is so important for this movie, like in order for it to work well. And so just seeing it in the theater was great. And I'm just like, it just feels different. I'm like, I wonder if I would have enjoyed movies like Godzilla vs. Kong and Nobody if I'd seen them in the movie and more. And I almost definitely would have. So anyway.
I also loved seeing the previews.
Yeah.
Like, seeing those in the big scale is just a lot more exciting than it is watching them at home. So, yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks for viewing this conversation. Hopefully the audio and video of this video was okay. I don't know. This is obviously a very different setup than I usually use. But thanks, Joy, for setting up the Wrath of Man screening. Great fun.
Did you have a good Friday night?
Yeah, it was good.
Maybe your first Good Friday night of the last year and change.
Something like that, yeah. Thanks for watching. This is Joy of Napping. I'm David Chen. If you enjoyed this video, feel free to hit subscribe, hit like, hit the bell icon. You'll get notifications whenever I go live, whenever I publish a new video. Thanks to all my patrons at patreon.com/DaveChen for supporting my work. Thanks for watching. See you next time.